Jason joining us today to talk us through one of the great new features, TMDL in Power BI. But just to make sure that we're doing our job as meetup organizers, we have a couple quick things we want to mention. And as always, we'll try to keep things going in the chat. Any questions you have, any ideas about upcoming events you want to share, that's a great place to put them. As always, we are Leslie and Lenore. This is an outdated slide. Leslie has flown the coop to SHI. Congratulations, Leslie. So we'll have to update our go-to slide that we've been leaning on for years, but we both love to make things and we both are very excited and enthusiastic about data. On deck is a presentation with Kyle Mueller. He's going to be doing Tales from the Dark Mode days, how far we've come and how we can go even further. This is a newer presentation he's really excited about, and he'll be joining us in person on September 24th. Leslie, I know you've been working on getting that scheduled. Do we have the date and time firmed up at this point?
We have the date and time firmed up. I just need to get a final confirmation on the location in the building, and then we'll be announcing that.
Fantastic. So please save the date for September 24th in the evening. We will do our usual happy hour fun and presentation together. We just need to make sure that the location is locked down before we get that confirmed on Meetup. As always, if you have open job opportunities, if you're looking for a job, if there are events and meetups that we didn't mention, I think we all know there's a ton of great stuff out there in the DC area, or if you're running into a specific technical challenge, you're welcome to pop that into the chat and having side discussions there, as well as connecting people so you can discuss things separately is totally okay. We'll be keeping a close eye on the chat to make sure everybody's being nice to each other, and that any questions that Jason gets throughout the presentation get flagged for him. And that's all we have for the intro. I'll go ahead and turn off the share. Actually, I think it may already be turned off. So Jason, can you go ahead and share and we will take it from here?
Sounds good. See it okay?
Yep, looks good.
Yep, looks great.
So I will say this presentation can be short and long, and it really depends on the demos. So I'm going to get to some demos. I'm not sure if I'll get to all of them. But this topic is enhancing Power BI development. It's fun to stay at the TMDL. I knew if I didn't do that, they would not have me back. So I did the little. So obviously this is, well, I won't even say it, a reference to the YMCA song. So I'm Jason Romans. I'm an analytics engineer. I do have a blog, The Dax Shepherd, but I do have to actually post blogs for it to be called a blog. Most of my posts are about my kind of speaking journey. I'm very honored this year I was made a Microsoft MVP. And then kind of the other thing that I love to point out is when I was creating one of my big data models and analysis services, I had ERP and one of the data sources, which meant it was tied to that data source. So I said, what if we name the data model TARDIS? That way it's generic, it's not tied to the industry, it's not tied to the ERP. So there is a data model still being used today by the company I was at called TARDIS. And I used to get emails and meeting requests saying access to TARDIS, tell us more about TARDIS. And yes, the data on the inside was bigger. So I do want to point out, I would not be here if it weren't for those that came before me, that pulled me along, that helped me, that taught me these topics, that encouraged me. And I will say in this kind of point of my life, it's still happening. There are people constantly surrounding me, helping me and others, and we see it every day. So I do have that blog I mentioned. When I'm done with this, I will put everything up there. There's a link for presentations, and that points to my GitHub repo. And so I put all my slide decks and then the demos that I'll be using today. So the TMDL journey, what we're going to do is, what is TMDL to begin with? Then we'll look at how PBIP, the project file, and TMDL relate. And then we'll look at TMDL view, look at some external tools, and then finally we'll conclude. I tried to do this navigation journey around kind of the hotel, the TMDL theme. I didn't really realize that my last thing is putting someone to sleep. So I really hope this presentation does not put you to sleep. That was not the intent. Oh, there we go. So what is TMDL? So in the beginning, back in the old days, which I use, we had SQL Server Analysis Services Tabular. It had this single BIM file, and it used TMDL. And so you would load up Visual Studio, the full version, just to edit this basically JSON file. And so Daniel created Tabular Editor, and he jokes about it that it basically was a glorified JSON editor. But it was nice. We could go look at that file. We could read through it. We could open it with different text editors. It just was a JSON file. This is a sample of a BIM file in Power BI. If you kind of start to notice, it's like, that doesn't tell me a lot. Like, I'm getting a couple columns, but still most of the space is all those delimiters, all those brackets. So the issues with that single large BIM file, and we already pointed out one, is it's difficult to comprehend. Too much text is focused on the delimiters. Also, it's hard to collaborate with others. Power BI and Fabric are moving towards having version control over everything. And yes, does it even exist if you don't have it in source control? So obviously someone was like, there has to be a better way. Well, in Power BI, that PBIX is almost a step backwards. It's almost this black box where you're like, how do I tell if this PBIX is even different than this PBIX? Yes, at the end of the day, it's basically a zip file. You can rename the extension to zip. You can open it up. But that is not exposed without you doing that. And obviously, that's how all the external tools do their changes and use it. If Power BI is not running, is they're looking at that underlying files. So now we're getting Power BI developer mode, and everything I'm about to cover currently as of today is in preview. Maybe by FabCon we'll get announcements or after, but it's currently in preview. So we can now store that PBIX as a project folder, and that's where we get the PBIP. We get the enhanced format for semantic model, which is what we're talking about today, TMDL. And then we don't really cover it today, but we're also getting an enhanced format for reports, which is the PBIR. So you can start using that. It's in preview and see the difference that it also makes, but on the report layer. So what is TMDL? It's the Tabular Model Definition Language. So as I kind of alluded to, and it's in the name, this is for the model. So everything concerning tables and columns and measures, this will not be including the things for reports. That will be that different format. So it's easier to read. It's similar to YAML. It has a folder structure, so you get a separate file for each table, perspective, role, culture. So that way I can work on just the product table and someone can work on just the sales table. And when we check those back in, there is no conflict. It does have minimal delimiters, again, like YAML, like Python, where you're using indenting for your code structure. And obviously, anytime we expose and have text, we're going to be able to leverage Copilot on that, whether in Visual Studio Code. And then obviously in Power BI Desktop itself, we're going to be able to use Copilot to help us. I had to say Copilot at least once by contract for this presentation. So what it is not, this is not in JSON format. So this is a shirt that I actually own because my name's Jason. So everyone thought it'd be funny to put JSON on it. And this is part of my Saturday morning learning group. We all got shirts made, and we do have a website now, so you can go there and learn more about that. So the credit for TMDL usually is given to Mateus. He's a Microsoft MVP. He's one of the creator of PBI tools. And he's very active in the community. And I also think this is a good time to point out he had a better solution. He came up with this, shared it with Microsoft, and then it's something that we benefit. So it does show that if you kind of have involvement, if you have a better solution, that it can end up in the final product. So the dual purpose, it is a definition language, so it will define the tables, the columns, but it also can be used as part of the scripting, as we'll see. So the unlocking the power of TMDL, you can do it with code now. It's no longer the GUI. So I liken it to PowerShell, and especially with DBA tools as a database administrator, you can now write code that makes your job easier. You can actually look at it. You can check it into source control. So things like I can create a date table. I can turn on and off features like our famous auto date time that we all love. I can discourage implicit measures, which is necessary for calculation groups. That also means I can audit those features. I can quickly look at that code and say, hey, is this set to true or false? I really think we're right at that point where this is just going to enable so much more, whether it's with AI, whether feeding everything to large language models, all our models. But we're right at that point. There's going to be so much that people do with this. Create those objects. I can move them quickly between projects like you would with Tabular Editor and scripting out the DAX. And it's going to be easier to do things like, I mean, it sounds simple, but just doing a search and replace. So this is an example of TMDL. To me, this is easier to read. I already can see, hey, there's a table date. It's got these two columns. These are the properties. Very easy to read and see. So we'll go through kind of a quick thing on syntax. You got the white space for indenting. You'll notice the hierarchy makes it easy to read. Triple slash is how you do a description. Regardless of what AI tells you, this is how you do description. Remember, TMDL, we're early on this. So things like Copilot and other AI, they try to use description : as a property, and this is the correct syntax. And that is one of the things you'll run into, is telling AI, no, this is the correct syntax. So the best way to learn this syntax, honestly, is just to create the object in the GUI, script it out, actually look at it. For an example is the description. To see if that is the correct syntax, I did it in the GUI, put a description on the column, and then when I scripted it out, it's yes, the triple slash is the correct syntax. And then you also can go view snippets. In my list of resources, I have like 3 slides that have a whole list of resources. Again, the slides will be on my GitHub. You can go out to the internet and look at snippets. There's a site called Fab Snippets. There's one that you can look in the TMDL gallery on Microsoft's site and actually view those snippets. I do have a article or a list of resources where it does reference John Kursky's article about security and being careful with what you use from the internet. So that is listed in the resources. Make sure you read that if you are pulling ones from the internet to use. So PBI and TMDL. You need both. How do they work together? So they're related but independent. The project file will store, if you select that option, it will store it in the TMDL format. But regardless, you can enable TMDL view, which can be used with your PBIX file. So even if you have a PBIX file, you don't want to save it in the new format, you can enable TMDL view and start using it. Much like you can go in and start using DAX query view with a PBIX file. So they are separate. Again, you do at this time need to enable those as a preview feature. As you notice, there's where you can store it in the TMDL format. And then you also, if you want, you can store that format of the report in the new format. And then lastly, I can enable TMDL view completely separate. And then there is the documentation links for each thing. Definitely, if you're thinking about using any of these in production, you want to go there and read the limitations and, kind of gotchas. And you may want to wait if you're going to put this in production until this is GA. So this is that first option. I've enabled it. I'm going to save it as a project, and then I'm going to go one step further and save the model in TMDL format. Like I joke, folder renaming is now also version control. And yes, I love going back to the gaming reference of before boss fight, you save the game. So let's go ahead and do a demo. Are we good so far?
While you get set up, I do have one question.
Yes.
You mentioned that much of this is in preview. Obviously, we all want to look at the learn more if we're going to use this in production, but have you noticed anything in particular that's funky with the current stuff in preview, or that people should be aware of before they jump in?
I think for the project folder, it's good. For the TMDL, it's good. I know for a while there was like the report format, which we're not really covering today, was the thing to kind of hold off on. And even that may be more baked in, but I haven't run into any issues. And obviously, as it's pointed out, the important part is to make sure you're actually checking things into version control or have that, okay, if I'm going to mess with this, I have the original copy and now I'm going to save it out as project and everything. So that's where version control would really come in handy.
Fantastic, thank you.
So I opened this whole folder in VS Code. I do want to point out, and I'll zoom in, but there are extensions in VS Code, and there's a TMDL extension that I have installed by Microsoft. So that gives you the syntax highlighting, and obviously if they add things to the language, that will be updated. And then this is in source control in Git, so there's no changes right now. My boss told me I do need to increase our sales, that we're just not making enough money. So, I mean, I only do Power BI. I'm not out selling things. So I'm going to go to the definition for that sales table in Power BI or in VS Code. This is the TMDL. And then over here is sales amount. I could probably increase our sales if I just times it by 1,000. That definitely will increase sales. Probably won't pass an audit. Probably will get fired at some point, but it will increase that number. Now, this is one of the pain points. I'm trying to show that I am editing those raw files that are saved there. That is the definition of the columns, the tables, the measures. Currently, you do have to go back and actually open that Power BI file, and it will load those, or you can even say reload those files. In the future, I know people have asked, is there a way you could do a button or something that will refresh from those files? Currently, there isn't, so you have to load it because it has to go and validate everything, and this is where you'll get an error message if you messed up with the syntax. So it's loading those files. So if I go list or look at that definition for sales amount, it's now increased by 1,000. So just by changing it in that source file that it's going to read for the definition, it changed it. Obviously, I have this in source control. So when I realize that was a really bad move, I can come back here and revert that change and say, okay, yeah, discard it. That was a bad idea. I really don't know about accounting and need to learn more. And then the next thing, actually, we're going to go ahead and move on to the slides if that's okay. Were there any questions we need to handle at this time?
None in the chat, so keep flying
Okay.
ahead. Folks,
Okay.
if you have a question, just go ahead and pop it in the chat and we'll make sure we get to it.
And I paused for just a second because obviously the demos are where the time will be eaten up. So I wasn't sure how many demos to do. So we'll go ahead with the slides, and then we're going to come back with a lot more demos once we have the TMDL view explained. So this is what happens if I go edit those raw files and then I make a syntax error. This is one of the messages you will get. So I name the model one model, which is not a supported naming of the model. And so it gives me this error message. This could be easy to diagnose, it may not be. So obviously this is not going to be probably the best way to work with making a lot of changes. So I did a fun little experiment after doing this session the last time. Someone asked like what changes and when does it change? So you can actually start with the PBIX file, check it into Git, and then change it to just the project file. And that's all the changes you'll get. And then you can actually delete the PBIX because it does save the PBIX when you save it out as a project. And then I upgraded it to TMDL. So then this showed all the changes that occurred. And then lastly, I went ahead and updated the report format. You can see. So from just the PBIX with all the options, it's a lot of changes underneath the covers, so to speak. So let's look at TMDL view. This is how most of us are going to use TMDL. It's the friendly interface. It's like DAX query view. It's where we're going to write a lot of DAX. So it can be used with PBIX files. There are limitations. So sometimes it will warn you that not all modeling changes are supported. And that just kind of depends on what you're trying to do. And obviously that will also change too. So there's your TMDL view button, basically right below the DAX query view. So I can go out and I can look at my list of tables or the model. I can script it to a tab, copy it to the clipboard. It doesn't matter if on that right side you're under table or model, you can do it in either place. What's even nicer than that is just dragging over what you want to script out. That makes it even easier. And then it adds it as a tab much like it does for DAX query view. So this is actually saved with your files in your model. So if you have a bunch in there, be careful because you are saving this with that model. So if you share the model with other people, whatever you put in here, they can also see. So don't write bad comments or I don't know why we need this stupid table or, oh. So this is the code interface. And if you notice at the top, it has a create or replace. So much like you would do in SQL and other languages, I want to create or replace this list of tables, this whole model, whatever you're actually scripting out. And then what's nice, and this is actually new. Like I had a screenshot that didn't have this, so I had to update it. They've added preview, much like the source control interface, where you can see the differences based on the changes you're trying to make. You can obviously rename those tabs, so that way it's kind of obvious. This is our date table. We're going to create calculation groups. And then, like I said, it is saved in that file under TMDL scripts. Much like using external tools, like a tabular editor, this is going to start exposing and allowing us to do stuff that they may not have time to put in the UI or have not put in the UI. So things like perspectives, you no longer will have to use an external tool, translations. And then, like I said, you can share those TMDL scripts. So as a company, you could have a centralized collection. They're all in SharePoint, they're in Teams. And then the sites with TMDL samples, the TMDL gallery, fab snippets. I really think the big one for most people is the obvious date table. That's the one that you're going to have. Hey, you can do this in Power Query. You can do it this way. We also have this TMDL script to do the date table. And then again, there's the article, John Kursky's article in the resources that just talks about if you are going to get things off the internet. And he really goes into depth of how, someone who's kind of nefarious can put things in there and expose data. So I have a couple folders here. They just have different things in them as far as kind of showing off. I also want to make sure I'm kind of closing and opening as we go. So it's not like, oh, it's just magically there. And like, I don't even know how we got that file or where it came from. So this PBIX is basically our Contoso database that we all love. It's going to have the dimension tables named with dim underscore and the fact table with fact underscore. I know whether or not to do that is very kind of divisive. So one thing we can do is we can actually go in. I've already scripted out, in this case, I scripted out the full model because I want to make some table changes. In order to make that table change, I need the parent and then have the tables listed. And so I have these tables, like I said, they're named dim. If we decide, hey, we're not going to do that, we're going to change them, I can come in here and just search for dim underscore and replace each occurrence. One time I did this, it failed, and it's because I was trying to do it just at the table level, and it was referenced and had the lineage referenced, and so it failed. So I go ahead and replace all that. And then I'm going to do the same thing for fact, just replacing it with nothing. So now it's just sales. I can preview, which again is new, and it will show me the differences. And then I can go ahead and apply it. Now I've changed the names of relationships and stuff, so I have to do that just kind of quick refresh. I'm not going to do full refreshes because I actually shut down Docker on my desktop for the presentation. But if it needs a full refresh, then I would go ahead and just refresh it. But if you notice, those table names are now changed. They're just empty because I made table level changes. I even wonder if some of that type of stuff will also change as far as what needs a refresh and what doesn't. So that was the PBIX file, TMDL view, built in. Now we're going to go back and almost did what we did earlier, where I'm going to open this folder up, which again, it's the Contoso model. I'm going to open this up with VS Code, opening up that whole folder. We saw this earlier, but earlier I was trying to edit the actual definitions. And like we said, it was kind of, if you make a mistake, it's not going to load correctly. A better way to do that is to actually come in here and we're going to look at the actual TMDL script. And I've actually scripted out the product table. So this is a script saved in that project. This is not going to load when I open it up. This is just going to put that script in that Power BI file so then I can run it from within the Power BI file. What's nice is I'm in VS Code, not in Power BI, not connected to a capacity. I now can use VS Code GitHub Copilot. I have a prompt that I wrote out and kind of changed it around. Kurt Bueller has a lot around this, a lot around using AI, excellent resource. So I'm going to copy this. I had to change this multiple times because it tried to put description as a property. It tried to do this. It's TMDL is new, so AI is playing catch up with it. So I'm going to go ahead and paste it here. I wanted to do it to this product table script, and I'm going to go ahead and run this. I'm actually going to change my model. It seems like I had better luck with GPT-5 Mini. And again, you can go and try your favorite AI. And then while this is running, the big thing you can use this for is things like translations. Like, okay, I need these in different languages, Italian, Spanish. Doing product descriptions is something that we really don't want to manually do. Obviously, though, if you don't feed in anything to it, it's going to have to guess what you're looking for. So this may be you have to refine it, or you give me 4 examples and I'm going to pick from it. It is working. If things get too slow, I kind of saved out different parts of this. I almost played with almost doing like a couple of columns. Usually it's not this slow. But we'll see if it does it. But like I said, it needs to know to put those 3 slashes above each column definition. And in the beginning, it was actually putting it here. It would also put the 3 slashes there. See, there it goes. It did it the wrong way, even though I even said somewhere I even put don't do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to the one that actually it did correctly earlier, just for time. So this is the one, and maybe my prompt is even the wrong prompt. But so it put these slashes here because I asked it to give me 2 different versions. For each one, you could do 3, 4, 5, and then you kind of see how it changes it up for each one. but it put it above the column. So that's the correct format. So that will work. I'm going to go ahead and run this. So I'm going to open up that Power BI file. It's funny because my prompt's just going to get longer and longer. Like, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. And it does. I mean, you saw what it came back with. It came back with so many things. And do you want me to do this? And it tries to suggest the annotation again. And I'm like, that's not a thing for this. So here's that file opened up. So these are the TMDL scripts that I have. So this is the one I was trying to edit, was this script product table. Almost seems like that one worked. But anyways, I'm not going to go back. But anyways, this is the one that I kind of saved out for demo purposes. So again, nothing has been changed. Nothing's happened to my model currently. If I want, I can go preview and see, okay, this is what the changes would be. And then when I'm ready, I can go ahead and click apply. Changes applied to the model. And then let's say I was like, oh, I forgot to put the actual description for the product table, the table itself. I can go in here and be like, where's the product? So I still can come in here and make any changes. And then again, this script, if I save this file, this is saved back to that project file. So then I can go and say, okay, what are the changes in Git and what's the differences there? Close this. Oh, actually, sorry, I forgot to even show what I did. So first of all, I hover over product. It says right there, description, stores the product. And then each one, we're going to get those descriptions. Again, I kind of had it where it did bullet points. So we have multiple. You probably don't want that, but it's also a way to see which one. It's like, oh, I really like the first version. Do more of that and only have the first version. And then again, because I actually did do a change in the UI for with descriptions, and I needed to read. Oh, I didn't save the file. Never mind. So we're good. So the last thing as far as the demo is, again, we're just going to completely stay in Power BI. I've went out to Fab snippets. I've copied some. I've read John Kursky's article. I make sure they're safe. I've read through the code. There's no sneaky code in there. Also can take and script out things from another project I did where, oh, I built out all these calculation groups. Now I want to script them out and reuse them. So this is purposely broke because it doesn't have those calculation groups. So let's go down to our TMDL view first, see what tools we can use here. So I'm in TMDL view. I have a script to create or replace and basically create a calculation group for time. So I go ahead and apply that. Again, it gives you that warning that needs to be refreshed. And then this actually worked because I had discourage implicit measures set to true. If I had it set to false, and I ran this, or that's what the setting already was, creating the calculation groups would fail. So then I would come in here and make sure it's set to discourage those implicit measures, which is a prereq for using calculation groups. Then I would come back in here and run it. I can also do things, and this is part of the fab snippets. This is Alexander Korn's snippet where I can create those measure tables and even have the little emoji or the little icons for things to make it kind of fun. So I can do that. And then there is those measure tables that I can now move measures over into them. Again, you may not want the icons or anything, so you would just customize everything to how you want it. And then if I don't have a date table, which I currently don't, but there's those new measure tables, I can come in here and create my date table. This one's actually by Zoe, so Data Zoe, and this was also on Fab Snippets. A lot of this should be moved over to TMDL Gallery at some point, or I assume it will. And then there's my date table. And obviously you could have different versions. You could have, okay, this one has fiscal, this one doesn't. Whether you comment it out or however you want to do it. The only thing is, if I kind of try to use that, it's not going to work. I get the magic repeating numbers, which if you use Power BI for a while, you immediately know, okay, there must not be a relationship there. And this is where things do get a little tricky with TMDL, is there is this lineage ID attached to things, and even VS Code has where it will generate a lineage ID for you, a GUID for you. In this case, I actually, if I'm correct, I actually built the relationship, scripted it out, and then deleted the relationship. Actually, I deleted the whole table too, the date table. But you can go in there and say this is the lineage, but that's one place where we're really going to have to watch out if we're trying to see what the lineage between the objects is, how you do that. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I'm going to have to learn the most about going forward. So if I come in here, this will build that relationship. Even though it does, oh, there it is, it's hidden. It's a hidden relationship. So there, everything's working now. And then my calc groups, which I probably should have showed this, obviously were broke. There were no calculation groups. So the fact that there actually are and they work means it created them correct. But the fact that I didn't have to use an external tool, I didn't even have to go out to a folder or anything. I completely was in here and either scripted out things I had already built and built the way I wanted to, or I went to Fab Snippets or TMDL Gallery and got them, to me is amazing. So like I pointed out though, and I know everyone, when something new comes out, everyone wants to wonder what's going to happen with external tools. That means they're no longer needed. I mean, DAX query views that way. Oh, we no longer need DAX Studio. And it's like all these things do a lot more than just one thing. And they have uses, and you don't have to maybe open something up. And so it doesn't mean external tools are going away. Things like Visual Studio Code obviously is not. And the fact there's the TMDL extension, this could be where you live and you write your TMDL code and then you use GitHub Copilot to do things. Things like PBI tools obviously embrace TMDL because that's kind of where it was created for. Tabular editor, I'm about to show, but version 2, the free version, it had the kind of the original save to folder, where early on you could save Power BI to a folder, but it had that BIM in there. So obviously not the best format. So now it has where you can save it as TMDL. There's even that little option up here where you can still save a BIM copy along with it. And then same thing with 3. Not only does it have saved to TMDL, but also how do you want to do the indentations and a bunch of settings around it. Like I said, this was kind of the original, to me, saved a folder where I actually could see what my model looked like underneath. So things have changed. In fact, one of the things I had listed under future was preview in TMDL view, which they've already added. So expanding those support for changes aren't currently supported is one of them. And then having TMDL view on the web, just like we have DAX query view. And then TMDL view Copilot, so you can be in Power BI, in TMDL view, and Copilot writing that TMDL for you. Again, I look forward to the day when we have the project files, everything's saved in TMDL, and a lot is fed into the different large language models to where we get better help. To the fact, I mean, you're going to get things like best practices. If you just feed it in the model, it's going to be able to tell you the best practices. I do think embracing this is good because it will help you with development, help you do things quicker, and then make you kind of, you have that skill that someone else doesn't have. If someone else is just using Power BI desktop and not embracing any of this, not checking out VS Code, not checking out GitHub Copilot, you're going to have an advantage. And the fact that we can reuse those modules, especially things like date table is going to be the number one thing in my opinion. And then eventually, I mean, just to be able to completely build the model using AI. Best practices, obviously we have it in Tabular Editor, we have it in Semantic Link Labs and notebooks. I think you're going to be able to have a lot of tools around looking at your model, looking at best practices, obviously eventually generating the whole model. Like I said, I have a lot of resources. I'm not going to go through them here. The slide deck will be available. Like I said, John Kursky's article is excellent. And then lineage tags are going to be kind of a big gotcha because you're going to have to make sure they line up if you're using them. And then there's a little shout out to the Saturday Morning Learning Group. And I hope you enjoyed your stay. And I hope you're not asleep at this point.
Not at all. So, Jason, this is so great. There are some questions in the chat and some comments.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and you guys keep me honest here. If I miss something, or if you have a question that didn't end up in the chat, feel free to come off mute. One of the questions was around, do you think that we should create, oh, no, I just lost it. Do you think that we should create reports in PBIP format instead of PBIX? And are there considerations around that, dropouts in doing that besides the fact that TMDL is it's a little bit of a mix because you've got PBI P format versus PBIX. I think PBIP is a little bit different from TMDL. I'm a little vague on like they're related but not the same thing, right?
Correct. And so you get into, let me stop this real quick. And that's where it does get confusing, because it's like you can't talk about TMDL without talking about everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But you basically have, I'm going to first check that first preview and save this as a project file, which breaks it out into the different folders like this.
Mm-hmm.
But it will still save the model as a BIM. It will still save the reports as is. And then you have that second check mark where, okay, I do want to save the actual definition of the model itself, not the reports, as TMDL. The question goes to saving the report. The report has nothing to do with TMDL. And currently, I'm probably going to go in the wrong. Anyways, the report is currently saved in the format it is, and it has that preview option, which I'll open up real quick, that you can save it as PBIR. That is a preview option. I know last time I checked it, there was a lot of limitations around it. So you would have to make sure what those limitations are. Eventually, once we get there, then yes, I mean, eventually everything will be saved in that format. So that's the store reports using the enhanced metadata format PBIR. So if you're even thinking of using that, I would go to learn more, see all the limitations. Again, make sure you're checking things into code, but I don't know where we're at on that, to be honest, for the report format.
Completely fair.
Yeah, I would say about 2 months ago, it still had a lot of significant challenges that led to rework. If you're considering it and you want to see what kind of challenges people run into, there's some threads in both the Microsoft Fabric community and the Power BI subreddit. But I would say it's not production ready at the moment.
Okay. There were a couple of questions that just came in. One of them was around what is the full form of TMDL? Abu Bakr, could you expand on that? Do you mean what does the acronym stand for, or what specifically goes into TMDL? We'll give him
like a Pokemon. It has like different forms.
Yeah. Final form being, some sort of giant fish monster. Okay, we'll give Abu Bakr a second to respond if he gets a chance, but Tabular Model Definition Language is what it stands for. Correct? Okay. Unless I just had a giant brain fart. Pratap asked, when we push project to Git, can PBIX be Git ignored and TMDL files be pushed so as to track changes?
So that's one where I would have to check what the current state is.
Yeah.
I know with, for instance, the project file, even though you're saving it as a project, if it's still the way it was, it actually takes and packages it up as a PBIX to send it to the service. That way they didn't have to change the service at this point. But yes, I would have to kind of check where we're at as far as if you're just deploying, that Git repo to your workspace, how that's supported. Again, that's all the stuff that's kind of in motion and what's being supported.
Yeah, you can Git ignore the PBIX. I think my question back would be, what's the value of retaining the PBIX?
Which layers nicely into, oh, go ahead.
I was thinking like not pushing the PBIX to Git, but pushing TMDL to the Git. And later on, like if we need to go back, like we can use TMDL on the local to go back. Something like that I was thinking. So for security, like we don't want to put that report itself to Git, just like this TMDL kind of files, which are JSON file, which might basically generate PBIX on the local. So I was just asking, how does that flow with Git works? So
I have a
Yeah, and like,
feeling. Go ahead.
oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I have a feeling that might be a much bigger topic. But Jason, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I would say just to keep it short, just we'd make sure what the limitations are. And I mean, even currently, when you save the PBIX as the project, which has the TMDL in it, I mean, it even keeps that PBIX there. But obviously, once you start making changes and working in it, then obviously that's going to differ than that PBIX. So it may no longer be something you could fall back on. But anything with uploading to the service, get with the workspace, I would just say at this point, check with what are the limitations are. Because we're early on some of this. And I think there is some talk in the chat of what people have done or what's supported. I'm just very kind of cautious on, again, these are all preview features.
Mm-hmm. And this does touch nicely on another thing that I think you saw in the chat that Leslie responded to around trying to figure out how to make transitions when you have technical debt, when you're trying to figure out how to retain information or move into new processes. I think this is really common, not just in terms of TMDL, but in terms of sort of every company that started with a self-service model and then has chaos that they're trying to wrangle back, right? But for you, Jason, what are your thoughts around how to make that efficient without getting into risk territory? If people are
I mean,
moving from PBIX into trying to leverage this instead holistically.
Obviously, you can start while it's still in preview, as I have, and you can start getting used to it and then seeing the benefits as part of it. That it's not just, oh, we have to save it in this other format. It's going to unlock all these benefits and these maybe even new ways of working. Like I said, being able to open up VS Code, open up a script and work in that environment. So kind of seeing the benefits and kind of getting people on board. And then it is going to be once everything's GA, and we don't even know eventually. I know it's scary, but is it going to be you can't even save as PBIX? Or no, it's always going to be there for backwards compatibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so at a certain point, it is going to be here's our PBIX from this point, and now we're saving it out as project file, and maybe you just do project or you do project and TMDL once it's GA, but at a certain point, you're just going to have to do it.
Great. Any final questions or thoughts as we get close to that 1 o'clock time today, guys? Seeing none, I just want to take a second to thank you so much, Jason, for sharing your knowledge and helping us learn. I got so much out of this, and I know from everyone in the chat that they have as well. In terms of next steps, we did record this meeting, so we'll work on making sure that gets up to YouTube. Jason, we'll talk to you offline about making sure that we collect those links so we can share them with the community. And I just look forward to continuing to learn from you and grow with you as you continue to put out this amazing content.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Okay. Thank you all. I hope everyone has a wonderful Wednesday. We'll see you at next month.
Thank you.
All right. Yep. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
everyone.